Today I'm going to be talking about bulking. There are all those different definitions, right? There's your lean bulk, there's your dirty bulk, there's your clean bulk, your winter bulk, your summer bulk. You name it, there's a different term for it. There's even bulks that involve a gallon of milk each day, which I find quite ludicrous to say the least. But first of all, let's think about who should bulk. In general, you should be younger and you should be healthy and you should have a pretty good metabolism, to be honest. I mean, if you eat excess, it's pretty evident if it's doing you benefits or if it's creating negatives for you. If you notice that you've got weight piling up around your midsection and your strength isn't really going up that much, you're basically just getting fat. It's not like that you go along every day, you're bulking a little bit, you're getting a little fatter each day, and suddenly 3 months in, you gain 10 pounds of muscle overnight. It's just not how it works. Muscle is a slow process, bit by bit. You're storing a little more nitrogen each day, ideally. Often, the body seems to work in spurts. So for a while, you'll grow really fast, and then you kind of plateau, and then you might grow again. It's kind of similar with fat loss when people don't see a change on the scale for a while and then suddenly stress hormones may drop. Maybe they had a cheat meal or a refeed which decreased cortisol levels, then they dump a load of water and suddenly they wake up and they're like 3 or 4 pounds leaner. The same can be said with bulking. Often you'll have a period of time where strength is going up every workout, you're looking better and better, and then suddenly you hit a wall and you start feeling lethargic and you're forcing those calories in and your body's just kind of rejecting it. A lot of people will tell you, keep going, push through that. I strongly disagree. I really disagree with that. I always say you have to listen to your body. Now there's a difference between listening to your body when your body says, oh, don't do another rep, we're sore, we're tired, or eat that pint of ice cream because we're hungry when you're dieting. And, oh, we don't want to eat this meal of chicken and rice because we feel full. That's one thing. Another thing is where you're feeling literally nauseated and you just go into the bathroom several times a day and your body's just generally out of whack. That's a sign that you need to stop. Maybe not long term. Maybe you just do a short little mini diet and then jump straight back onto the so-called bulking season. I've done that with a lot of clients. We'll push, we'll keep the calories climbing, the client gets bigger and stronger, and suddenly they say to me, Cornelius, I can't get the food in, I just feel like shit. I say, okay, we'll do a 1 to maybe 3 week diet. And those diets are often pretty hard diets. Often it's basically just protein and vegetables. We're dumping a lot of excess water because a lot of the weight that's gained during a bulk, especially for an enhanced lifter, is going to be water. So if we can pull some of that water off, chances are we're going to feel better. Because the more bloated you are, the higher the chance of sleep apnea. And if you don't have a CPAP machine and you have sleep apnea, you're not going to recover correctly. So you're not going to grow as well, but you're also going to have more stress on your organs. And at the end of the day, bodybuilding, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's not how fast can you get to 250, it's how long does it take to get you to 250 in a healthy manner, and then how long can you hold that physique. Because I always say bodybuilding's a year-round sport, right? Some people will say, oh, it only matters what you look like on that one day. That's true. I mean, for competitive bodybuilding purposes, that is true. But for most of us, bodybuilding is more than just competing. We love to look muscular. We love to look big. And we want to be like that for, ideally, the most of our life, right? I mean, you're not thinking to yourself, oh, I only want to do bodybuilding for 2 years and then I want to stop and become a marathon runner. You're probably not thinking that. Most people aren't. So we have to think about how do we get to our maximal potential healthily so we can stay super jacked for years to come. There's no point flying up there, then having some kind of organ failure, and then you either die or you have to give it up and you have to shrink down. We've all seen those famous pictures of those professionals that were really big and then they shrink down to nothing. Now, there's a big misconception where people think that's because they were using tons of steroids, then they stopped the steroids and then they just disappeared. No. I would say 99% of the time when you see those pros that were really big and now they're tiny, it's because they had some kind of organ failure. Perhaps they're on dialysis or they had a heart attack or something pretty extreme. That's why they lost so much size. Generally, when you talk to a lot of ex-professional bodybuilders, a lot of them will say, I'm actually trying to lose size and it's hard to do. And that's something I experienced myself. Not that I actively tried to lose size the last couple of years, but I had other things going on in my life and I wasn't really super focused on my own bodybuilding. I was focused on my clients, family, on other things. But I found, due to so many years of being over 220 pounds at 5'8", I had years where I was always around 250. I find that I can hold 210, 220 at sub 10% body fat. Honestly, this sounds kind of crazy to some of you, but averaging maybe 1, maybe 2 workouts per week and maybe 2 or 3 meals a day, my body just stays like that. So as soon as I want to gain some more size, all I have to do is go back to eating 5-6 times a day, training more frequently, and I blow up because I've already got the muscle memory there. But first you have to get there. So that brings us back to the first point. What kind of a bulk should we do? I think pretty much everybody beside the naturally fat kid has at least one big bulk in them. So I remember when I was 17 going on 18, I'd been training for a few years, but I decided I wanted to stop doing skating and I wanted to get into powerlifting and I wanted to get as big and as strong as possible. And I went from, I think when I was 18, I was about 155 pounds. And then before I was age 20, I was over 220. And then again in my early 20s, I did another bulk and I went up from around 220 to my heaviest was 255. And I maintained like some kind of an abs outline at all times, which I think is very important. Because what are the major dangers with bulking too fast, in my opinion? I've already mentioned the sleep apnea, that's one thing, especially from the bloating. But it's also important that we don't saturate our body as far as cholesterol goes. Your triglycerides are going to go up generally as your calories go up, especially if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, which is much more of an issue than, let's say, fat intake. But if you want to grow really big, you're going to have to eat plenty of carbs. Those people who say you can get huge eating just fat and protein, maybe somebody's able to do it. I've personally never seen anybody do that myself. So as long as you're in a good lean state to start with, I say, eat your regular diet, whatever that is, your staple bodybuilding foods, and then eat a little bit on top based on how you feel that day. So how I would do it is I would have my 5-6 meals per day, usually 6. 4 of them would be meals, 2 of them would be shakes. At one point I was waking up in the middle of the night and I was literally drinking 1,000 calories from a homemade weight gainer shake that had like oatmeal, olive oil, orange juice, whey protein. That's pretty rough, but it did the job. But come the evening, once you've had all your meals, if you want a bowl of ice cream or something, go and have it, eat it. But don't make entire meals out of junk. I tried that, and honestly, it didn't work that well for me. I'm not even talking about muscle gain. I'm not even talking about getting fatter. I'm just talking about how I felt. I did not feel good. So if I ate a big, let's say, I remember in my first year at college, I would go to McDonald's in the evening and I would basically order a load of things, big burgers, and eat as much as I could to get the calories in. And that would work for the first few days, but then what would happen is I would wake up the next day and I'd be so bloated and sluggish feeling, I wouldn't want to eat my regular meals. And I didn't feel good to go and train at my optimal levels because my body was basically bogged down. It was pulled down by this processed garbage. So I say try and make your diet as bodybuilderish as possible, which means sticking to your basic food sources, non-processed foods, and then add in on top your little treats, whatever you like to eat. I think that's a much smarter approach than going either the very extreme lean method where you're like, I'm only going to eat 5 foods and I'm just going to eat them in an enormous quantity, because that brings its own issues. I mean, some people can do it, but eating 20 cups of cooked rice a day, for example, let's say if you were eating upward of 900 carbs a day, which a lot of larger bodybuilders need to do, that's a lot of volume. And I think that can contribute to that blown out midsection look that a lot of bodybuilders end up having. In a lot of cases, I don't think it's actually due to the drugs. I think it's due to excessive eating, this large volume all the time. So if you can take some more calorie dense foods, put them in place of some of that very high volume food, I think you're kind of better off. What I would do when I was growing, I would have a lot of meals like 90% lean bison with some homemade oven fries, which is basically just potato chopped up, with some vegetables. And then for dessert, I might have a bowl of ice cream. And I would just monitor myself. Was I getting stronger? Was I looking, in my opinion, better? Because at the end of the day, yes, you want to achieve a goal, so you can't have super ripped abs year round. But don't be that guy, that perma-bulker guy who's always like, oh yeah, if I cut down, I would be shredded in 20 pounds from now. And in reality, they have like 60 pounds to lose and they don't have an ab in sight. What's the point of that? I mean, there's one thing to look big in clothes, and then there's one thing to look like a bodybuilder without clothes. Looking big in clothes is easy to do. Anybody can do it. Looking like a bodybuilder without clothes, that's kind of harder to do. And when I say kind of, I mean a lot harder to do. Would I ever suggest that women do bulks? Not really. I think a female can generally get all the calories she needs from high quality, good food. And a lot of females, especially if they're using performance enhancing drugs, can grow muscle while dieting down on lower calories. So if they're eating a maintenance or slightly above, they're gonna grow maximal amounts of tissue. There's no need to push enormous weight gains onto a female body. I just don't think they're designed to handle that. It's just not as robust, and in the long term you can cause that so-called metabolic damage, which is a legitimate fear. It can happen. You can have a downregulation of hormones to such an extent that if you don't get hormone replacements, that you just don't feel, don't look, and don't perform as good as you'd want to perform. So that brings me to another point, and that's when, and I hate to say this, but a lot of bodybuilders who have been bodybuilding for a long time, they think they have a lot more growth left in them. So maybe they've been training for 10, 15 years, they're maybe 220 on stage, so real big guy, 250 in the off season. They often start to think that the ticket to getting bigger is bulking up even heavier, and then they'll pull these magic numbers out of the air, like 300. That's an often number, isn't it? People are like, I'm gonna bulk to 300 pounds. Why? Why that number? Think about it. It's just a number. Everybody's frame is different. Everybody's different heights. So 300 pounds on, let's say, me would look a lot different than, let's say, on you if you're 6'1" or 6'2". And 300 pounds at 10% body fat looks very different to 300 pounds at 20% body fat, which is the reality of what will happen to most people if they just force their weight up like that. But that's really the issue. When you get these older bodybuilders, often, I would say past their mid-30s, they're already pushing their body, they've already pushed their body hard over the years, and now they want to do another bulk to gain another few pounds. And that's usually when these health issues start arising. And I see it a lot. I see a lot of guys who have elevated fasted blood sugars, higher blood pressures, really messed up lipid values. And those are the last people that should ever be bulking. For those people, the best approach is to get really lean, and I mean really lean, like contest lean, and then slowly build up from there. John Meadows is a great example of that, because he did all the bulks when he was younger, and then he even said his best growth, I believe, was when he stayed really lean and he didn't have to lose as much for his next contest. Because like it or not, dieting down and losing a load of weight, even if you don't lose a lot of muscle tissue, like the contractile tissue, it's still stressful for the body. So it's not going to be the same look if you have to lose 40 pounds as it is if you lose 20 pounds. The tissue, the quality, the skin tightness, which is another big issue. If you have a lot of spot fat, so let's say for a female, big fat ass, or for a male, around the love handles, and you bulk some more until that area gets very laden down with fat. When you diet all the way back down, there is a good chance, and this is a very good chance, that the skin is loose. And if the skin is loose, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're going to do really badly on stage compared to having tight skin. The amount of times I see somebody with far less muscle beat somebody who is way, way bigger and maybe just as lean but just has looser skin, it's quite frequent. And it's unfortunate because in my opinion, bodybuilding is about building maximal size, the biggest muscles. And I think there is a little bit of an overemphasis on conditioning. There's arguments to and against that, and this is coming from somebody who has, when I've won shows, it's usually because of my conditioning, and I still think there's too much emphasis on conditioning in general, because if you get super shredded and your ass is still not super striated, should you be really marked down for that? It's one area. And then conversely, if your ass is shredded and then you got a little bit of loose skin on the stomach, why are you getting marked down much more than somebody who has a little bit of loose skin on the ass but a tighter stomach? It's because human preference goes for a tighter midsection over the tighter ass, which in my opinion is not judging fairly, but it is how it is. And if you want to avoid a situation like that, you don't want to bulk up so big that when you diet down that you have the issue of loose skin. For this and more information, please hit subscribe.